The alien warlord stood on the command deck of the Obsidian Crown, a vast blade-shaped starship that blotted out the sky of the shattered colony below. His armor gleamed obsidian black, polished like a trophy. His soldiers spread through the smoldering ruins, rounding up survivors who limped or crawled among the smoking craters. For the alien empire, this was the 1,000th human world taken in a century of conquest. The warlord expected little challenge. Only the usual whimpers, the usual broken resistance, the usual begging for mercy. The weapons master, towering and elegant, moved like a dancer among the rubble, slicing through the last defenders. His weapon of choice, a single-edged blade carved from living crystal, pulsed faint blue as if feeding on the terror in the air. He relished these moments, not the killing itself, but the ritual humiliation of a defeated enemy. It was theater after all. Every empire needs performances of power. One of his soldiers dragged a human girl into the open, her wrists bound in a loop of crackling energy cord. Dirt smeared her face, but she stood straight. That irritated him. Most broke by now. She didn't even look at him, her eyes wandering upward as though bored by the towering alien warriors around her. He approached slowly, savoring the rhythm of his armored boots striking the cracked ground. "Your species," he said, his voice carrying the cold metallic timbre of their kind, "always struggles, always resists. Pointless every time." He turned the blade in his grip, letting sunlight glint across its surface. His soldiers watched, expecting the flourish that always ended his battles. He gave it to them, a sudden motion, a snap of his wrist, the weapon whistling through the air toward her heart.
She yawned.
The blade never reached her. Fingers snapped closed midair, with a sound like breaking bone. She held the weapon casually, turning it as though inspecting a piece of scrap metal. The cord at her wrists fell away in neat slices, severed, without her even glancing at it. She met his eyes for the first time, calm and unblinking. Something in the air shifted. Not the soldier's fear, not yet. Confusion, yes.
Surprise.
Even a hint of awe. But beneath that, the weapon's master felt irritation. A human child should not be able to do this. "Return my weapon," he said, each word clipped, deliberate. She tilted her head, almost curious. Then she snapped the blade in half with one hand, letting the pieces fall at his feet. The sound rang louder than the explosions still rumbling across the colony. No one moved. She stepped past him through the line of alien soldiers. They didn't stop her. None even breathed, if their kind still breathed at all. A shuttle roared overhead, human-built, scorched from battle, but functional. Its hatch dropped open. She climbed aboard without a backward glance. The weapon's master watched it lift into the sky, rage simmering beneath his polished armor. He said nothing. There would be time to make sense of this later. For now, the colony was ash and ruin. Let her run home. Let her tell Earth what awaited them. When the fleet regrouped above the planet, the alien commander received reports without looking up from the tactical display. Another human world erased. Another victory. He barely listened when the weapons master mentioned the girl. A single anomaly meant nothing against centuries of empire building. Humans had always been insects, annoying, numerous, breakable. He ordered the fleet to advance on the next target, the human cradle world itself. Earth. They reached its orbit days later. The planet spun blue and white beneath them, a jewel hung in blackness. Their ships formed a spearhead around the obsidian crown, weapons cycling up, atmospheric shield breakers humming as they warmed. No resistance worth noting. A few human fleets retreated after token skirmishes. Earth's satellites went dark one by one, abandoning orbit. The aliens laughed in their cold, hissing way. It puzzled the weapons master. Human radio chatter held no screams, no panic, only crisp instructions, calm evacuations, traffic flowing underground into fortified shelters. He expected fear. Instead, he heard organization. The commander dismissed his unease. Primitive tactics. They flee because they know what follows. And so the fleet descended. Across continents, alien soldiers deployed in black waves. Cities fell silent as power grids blinked out. Yet no human leaders offered surrender. No monuments toppled. The planet waited, as though holding its breath. Above the capital, the weapons master stood at the prow of a carrier as its guns tracked empty streets. He wanted another performance, another ritual of fear to mark the Empire's triumph over this stubborn species. Yet something gnawed at him. The girl on the colony world, her bored expression as she shattered his blade. Reports flowed in, odd ones. Human nuclear arsenals missing from silos. Orbital telescopes offline. Whole data networks wiped clean before alien control could seize them. As though the humans themselves had cut the strings. The commander ignored them all. "Secure the planet," he ordered. The weapons master obeyed. He always obeyed. Yet as he led soldiers into the heart of human cities, finding only abandoned streets and eerily functional defenses, a single thought began circling his mind like a carrion bird. This feels wrong. That night, on the bridge of the Obsidian Crown, alien tacticians reviewed the day's victories. Cities occupied. Resistance minimal. Losses negligible. Yet their maps showed holes. Empty regions where sensors failed, where satellites returned nothing but static. The commander waved it off. "We have the planet. We have won." No one argued. Not aloud. The weapons master kept silent too, but his gaze lingered on the tactical displays far longer than necessary. The girl's face returned again and again in memory, calm, unimpressed, almost pitying. He had killed thousands across a dozen campaigns. Broken warriors, burned cities, silenced rebellions. Yet that look, on a human child of all creatures, stayed with him like a thorn under armor. Far below, in the planet's shadowed oceans, something vast and silent stirred. And above, the aliens celebrated a victory they did not yet understand. The weapons master left the bridge without permission, descending alone toward the occupied city. He needed answers, though he could not have said why. Perhaps to find the girl. Perhaps to prove to himself that nothing waited behind those dark human eyes. But the night streets gave him nothing. Only wind through empty towers. Only the distant hum of human machines, deep underground, running on silent power reserves. Only the unsettling sense that the war was not unfolding as it should. He returned to the carrier before dawn, feeling, though he would never speak it aloud, that somewhere unseen, the humans were watching everything. Waiting. And that was the first time in his long, victorious life that the weapons master felt something colder than fear creeping into his chest. Something he had no word for yet. But soon enough, he would learn its name. The first sign that something had gone wrong came from the fleet's outer sentinels. A formation of drones patrolling the edge of Earth's orbit vanished from the tactical grid without a distress ping, as though plucked from existence. No debris, no explosion trails. One moment there, the next erased. The alien commander frowned over the display. Losses happened in war, but this was surgical, precise, and far too quiet. Reports followed. Cargo convoys supplying the fleet began disappearing en route from the Empire's nearest staging grounds. Sensor logs showed nothing but brief static interference before communications went dead. When retrieval squadrons investigated, they found only cold wreckage, engines gutted, weapons offline, crew gone. The commander ordered tighter formations, heavier escorts. He told himself it was rebellion from surviving humans across the colonies. He told the weapons master the Empire remained untouchable, that no species rising from mud and water could threaten millennia of conquest. But unease crept across the fleet like frost. Beneath Earth's oceans, seismic readings showed vast artificial structures waking from hibernation. At first, the aliens assumed they were relics, primitive weapons from earlier wars. Then the oceans themselves split as colossal towers rose through the waves, sheathed in armor too dense for their scanners to pierce. Orbital platforms powered by solar lattices unfolded above the planet, weapons arrays swiveling toward the alien ships with unnerving precision. The fleet's first officer murmured that such construction should have taken centuries. The commander ignored him, though his own eyes lingered on the displays longer than before. The weapons master watched in silence from the bridge's edge, remembering the human girl crushing his blade between her fingers as though swatting a gnat. A performance, yes, but whose? He thought he had been the actor. Now, he wasn't so sure. Human broadcasts resumed across the fleet's channels, but there were no surrender pleas, no propaganda screams. Only coordinates. Calm voices reading lists of them, hour after hour. When the fleet ignored the transmissions, orbital mines detonated along those very coordinates seconds later, ripping supply barges and escort frigates into silent fireballs. The commander ordered the jamming of human signals. It changed nothing. The mines kept detonating exactly where human voices had warned they would. On the fourth day, something worse happened. An alien dreadnought, heavily shielded, bristling with weapons, escorted by 24 cruisers, vanished mid-transit between the moons. Its escorts found nothing but empty vacuum where it should have been. Sensors replayed a single frozen frame before its disappearance, a sphere of black light blooming silently around the vessel, then collapsing inward. The fleet had no name for such a weapon. That night, the commander convened his war council aboard the Obsidian Crown. Generals, tacticians, governors. Voices rose across the chamber as losses mounted. Some demanded orbital bombardment of Earth cities before this hidden threat grew worse. Others argued the fleet should retreat, regroup, bring heavier assets from the core systems. The commander silenced them with a single gesture. His voice stayed steady, though lines had deepened around his eyes. We hold this world. We hold this system. Panic serves the enemy. One governor slammed his fists on the table. If the humans possess such weapons, why wait until now to use them? No one answered. The weapons master finally spoke, his tone quieter than usual, though every syllable cut through the chamber. Because they wanted us here. The council turned toward him. He rose slowly, armor whispering with emotion. The empty streets. The vanishing arsenals. The child who broke my blade. He paused, eyes scanning the assembled officers. They have been drawing us in since the first colony burned, herding us like prey. The governor sneered. You speak as though they are hunters. These are humans. Exactly, the weapons master interrupted. The commander studied him with unreadable eyes. Then, without comment, he ordered the council dismissed. Alone with his thoughts, he turned to the tactical displays again. More losses. More silent strikes. He realized something that chilled him far more than the weapons tearing through his fleet. The humans never gloated, never taunted. They fought without speeches, without threats, without anger. It was not the way of rebels or cornered animals. It was the way of professionals. On the fifth night, he requested historical archives from conquered human worlds. Millennia of their warfare filled his screens, trenches drowning in mud and blood, cities flattened by firestorms, mushroom clouds blooming above shattered landscapes. Footage from their world wars played in grim silence as he watched entire generations marched into carnage without hesitation, without surrender. He saw Stalingrad, Verdun, Hiroshima,
D-Day.
He saw wars fought across deserts, jungles, oceans, skies, the black void of space. And for the first time since assuming command of the fleet, the alien commander felt something close to fear. His species had fought wars, yes, but conquest wars, clean wars, campaigns of overwhelming force. Humans, by contrast, had fought wars of survival. Wars where defeat meant extinction. Wars where entire nations starved rather than yield. They had centuries of practice. When the weapons master entered the chamber hours later, the commander spoke without turning from the screens. We thought them primitive. We were wrong, the weapons master said simply. Another alarm cut across the bridge. A second dreadnought lost. This time, escorts swore they saw nothing approaching, only flashes of light, then twisted wreckage drifting where fleets had been seconds before. Calm human voices spoke again across open channels. Leave our skies. The fleet did not. That evening, deep within the Empire's core worlds, messages arrived from outlying sectors. Uprisings, sabotage, shipyards burned by unknown attackers. Some whispered of human fleets appearing where no human fleets should be, vanishing before counterstrikes arrived. The Empire began to fracture at its edges, though the commander did not yet see it. His eyes stayed fixed on Earth, on the planet that remained maddeningly quiet even as it bled his forces dry. The weapons master stood beside him at the viewport, watching storms coil across the planet below. Neither spoke for a long time. Finally, the commander said, "What do you see when you look at them?" The weapons master considered. "A species that has decided to stop losing." The commander's jaw tightened. "And if we do not break them now?" The weapons master turned from the glass. "Then we will teach the galaxy fear of a name no one feared before." Silence stretched between them. Around the fleet, alien soldiers whispered rumors of ghosts striking from nowhere, of human weapons rewriting the laws of war itself. The commander gave no new orders that night. But far below, in the oceans and mountains and hollowed cities, the humans kept building, kept watching, kept waiting. While above, the Empire finally began to wonder if it had made a mistake too vast to undo. The War Council fractured under the weight of its own arrogance. On the Obsidian Crown's command deck, voices rose like clashing steel as the Empire's highest officers hurled accusations across the chamber. Some demanded immediate withdrawal, claiming no victory was worth the hemorrhaging fleets. Others shouted for extermination strikes, to scour Earth's surface until nothing breathed. Every word reeked of panic barely contained beneath imperial pride. The commander watched them from the central dais, his eyes cold as the void beyond the glass. He had led campaigns across 100 worlds, reduced continents to ash without hesitation, but this war felt different. The enemy moved with a precision he could neither predict nor understand. No matter how many ships he threw forward, humans struck where his armor was thinnest, then vanished before retaliation came. "Cowards," one governor spat, his robes trailing behind him as he slammed a fist on the table. "They skulk in shadows because they cannot fight openly." "They fight," the weapons master said softly, though his voice carried over the din like a drawn blade. "And they win." The room fell silent. He stood near the holomap projecting fleet losses, crimson markers spreading across space like infection. His dark armor reflected the flickering light as he spoke again. "This is not rebellion, not desperation. This is a campaign designed to break us without mercy or haste." One of the younger generals laughed sharply, a brittle edge in the sound. "You give them too much credit. They are outnumbered, outgunned." "And yet," the weapons master interrupted, turning toward him, "here we stand, bleeding." The commander ended the council with a single gesture. Enough words. He needed action before the Empire splintered entirely beneath him. Orders went out for full assault. Every remaining dreadnought, every cruiser, every dropship descending toward Earth's defenses in one unstoppable wave. No more surgical strikes. No more half measures. They would burn the planet until its own oceans boiled away. The fleet moved at dawn. Alien warships poured through the upper atmosphere, skies streaked with fire as energy lances stabbed toward human strongholds. Yet the response came not from the ground, but from orbit itself. Wormholes split open like black wounds across the heavens. Human ships erupted from nothingness, sleek, silent, bristling with weapons no Imperial database recognized. They struck not in rage, but with chilling efficiency, cutting through the fleet's flanks before vanishing into new wormholes like ghosts returning to their graves. Alien cruisers died by the dozen. Dreadnought shields crumpled under kinetic strikes hurled at near-light speed. Whole squadrons disappeared as space itself folded around them, collapsing into spheres of annihilation. On the bridge of the Obsidian Crown, alarms shrieked across every console. Officers shouted coordinates, damage reports, desperate countermeasures. The commander stood rigid, watching his empire's finest armada torn apart by an enemy that spoke no threats, issued no demands, offered no terms. The weapons master requested deployment. He would not sit idle while machines decided the war's outcome. Granted permission, He descended with the vanguard as dropships speared toward a human fortress rising from Earth's largest ocean like the spine of some buried titan. They breached its outer walls beneath storms lit by fire and plasma. Inside, human soldiers fought not like prey, but like executioners, disciplined, wordless, eyes hard as the metal corridors around them. And at the heart of it waited her. The girl from the colony world stood among the defenders, armored now, though her face was bare beneath the rain hammering through a shattered ceiling. She carried no visible weapon. The weapon's master strode through the chaos toward her, blades humming in both hands. Around them, alien and human soldiers clashed in thunderous violence, yet none dared cross the space between the two combatants. "You," he said, voice low as the storm, "are the beginning of this." She regarded him with the same faint boredom as before, though now he sensed something beneath it. Pity, perhaps, or contempt sharpened to a razor's edge. He lunged. Steel met emptiness. She moved like water slipping around stone, each strike dodged with insulting ease. When his blade finally connected, she caught it barehanded, wrist twisting, snapping the weapon's living core as though breaking the neck of a bird. For the second time, shards of his pride fell ringing to the floor. But she did not finish him. Instead, she looked toward the sky where alien dreadnoughts died in silent flashes above the clouds. "You should leave," she said softly, as though offering mercy rather than threat. He slashed again, rage flaring hotter than reason. She evaded, disarmed, left him staring at the broken halves of his own weapon scattered between them. Something inside him cracked then, not bone, not flesh, but certainty itself. The weapon's master, veteran of 100 victories, understood at last that this war was already lost. When extraction orders came minutes later, retreat, regroup, survive what remained of the fleet, he followed them without protest. Above the burning fortress, human ships regrouped in perfect silence, weapons cold now, no pursuit offered as alien craft limped back into orbit. Mercy again, or warning? On the Obsidian Crown's bridge, the commander watched casualty lists scroll like funeral cloth through the air. Entire legions gone. Half the fleet burning in vacuum. Governors demanding retreat. Soldiers whispering mutiny. He saw it clearly now, the empire cracking, splinter by splinter, beneath the weight of one miscalculation too great to hide. And through it all, the humans spoke only once, across every open channel, their calm voices carrying like cold wind over ruins. "Leave our skies, or be buried in them." No one on the bridge laughed this time. The commander closed his eyes as the fleet limped beyond the moon's shadow, what remained of its glory trailing smoke and silence behind it. He had thought humanity weak, thought this war routine, thought victory inevitable. Now he wondered if history would remember him not as conqueror, but as the fool who taught humanity how to win again. Silence consumed the Empire's high council chamber, a place once filled with the arrogance of rulers who believed themselves eternal. Now only the commander stood beneath the great banners, watching as holographic projections detailed the catastrophe in cold, uncaring numbers. Entire sectors had fallen quiet. Shipyards failed to respond to summons. Colonies refused transmissions, their governors declaring neutrality or outright rebellion. For centuries, fear of the Empire had bound them together. That fear had evaporated in a single war no one had foreseen. The commander felt its absence like air rushing from a breached hull. He had built his name on obedience, discipline, on victories strung across the stars like beads on a blade. Yet here he stood, stripped of certainty, watching the Empire fracture into pieces sharp enough to cut its own hands. The weapons master entered, armor scorched from the failed campaign, weapons gone. He carried only silence, a man who had bled pride across battlefields until nothing remained but the thin thread of duty binding him upright. "They will come," he said at last, voice quiet but certain. The commander did not ask who. He knew. Across the galaxy, human fleets moved with implacable precision. Wormhole corridors bloomed where no map had charted them, spitting ships into orbit above rebellious worlds, shattered garrisons, smoldering fortresses. Yet they did not conquer. They dismantled, disarmed, departed, leaving behind governments trembling at the swiftness of their defeat. The Empire's admirals demanded counterstrikes even as their fleets shrank with each engagement. Governors howled for protection the Empire could no longer give. Politicians in jeweled robes cursed one another across council floors as human warships carved paths through their territory with mathematical calm. And through it all, humanity spoke only in ultimatums: leave, yield,
Disarm.
never threats, never rage. It unsettled the commander far more than vengeance would have. Vengeance was predictable. This was purpose wearing the mask of mercy. When the humans came to the Empire's homeworld, no fleet rose to meet them. There were no ships left to throw into the abyss. Orbital defenses stayed cold, their crews refusing suicidal orders. The Empire's capital watched in breathless silence as the human armada descended through clouds like judgment given form. The commander walked alone to the palace steps where governors, generals, and ministers cowered behind marble walls. He carried no weapon. Around him, alien civilians lined the plazas, faces unreadable as the first human dropships settled on towers and landing platforms without resistance. From the lead vessel emerged a single figure, not armored, not bristling with weapons. The girl from the colony world, now draped in a uniform marked only by a single silver insignia at her collar. She approached without hurry, eyes sweeping the silent crowd before settling on the commander. For a long moment they regarded one another, two veterans of opposite sides bound by the same understanding. This was the end of something vast. The weapons master moved beside the commander, shoulders squared though no defiance burned in his eyes anymore. He had seen her fight, seen fleets collapse under human strategy executed with surgical indifference. He knew how this ended. The girl's voice carried across the plaza, clear, unshaken. Surrender your fleets. Dismantle your weapons. We will not ask again. Gasps rippled through the assembled governors. Never in the Empire's history had a conqueror stood on these steps. Never had anyone spoken such words within sight of the imperial banners. The commander felt the weight of centuries pressing against his shoulders. Pride urged him to refuse, to spit defiance into the teeth of defeat. But he remembered wreckage burning in orbit, soldiers scattering across broken worlds, civilians staring at the sky as if waiting for something worse than death. He knelt. Armor clanged against stone. Around him, governors froze as though the air itself had turned to ice. Surrender was a word the Empire had erased from its tongue generations ago. Yet here it was, falling like an executioner's blade in a single motion. One by one, others followed. Generals, ministers, finally the governors themselves, robes pooling on the marble as the human fleet hovered above them like silent gods. The weapons master knelt last. He had fought to the edge of death for the Empire's glory, but as his knee touched stone, he felt only exhaustion, a hollow quiet where loyalty used to burn. The girl watched them without triumph. "This is not conquest," she said, as if reading their thoughts. "This is containment. There will be no revenge, no slaughter, but your empire ends today." And so it did. In the weeks that followed, human envoys replaced governors across surrendered worlds. Disarmed fleets drifted into shipyards now flying unfamiliar banners. Trade routes reopened under human oversight. Soldiers patrolled former imperial strongholds, wearing the insignia of a species once dismissed as prey. The commander was offered a post, governor under human supervision, to maintain order among his own defeated people. He accepted, though the decision tasted of ashes. Pride had no place in survival. The weapons master disappeared into obscurity, declining titles, honors, command. He had shattered blades, burned worlds, ridden victory across star maps spanning galaxies, yet a single war had unmade him. He left the capital in silence and never returned. The girl stood only once before the Empire's council after surrender was complete. Her words were brief, cold, final. "We did not seek this war. but we will finish it if we must. And then she left, fleet following her beyond the stars toward threats not yet named. In the capital's great hall, the commander watched her ships vanish into the dark, a storm receding beyond the horizon, yet leaving the air forever changed. He felt the shape of history twisting beneath his feet, the old order collapsing, while something vast and new took its first breath. No cheers rose from the plazas. No parades, no music, no banners unfurled in victory. Humanity celebrated nothing. Perhaps that was what unsettled him most. They had awakened not conquerors, but something colder, quieter, carved from centuries of survival and war. And as the last human warship slipped into orbit's shadow, the commander understood what the galaxy would learn soon enough. This was only their beginning.